process or anything of that nature. So I don't want to give you that much credit. So if you
see, you want to begin talking a little. You know what I'd like to begin doing is, what do you know about Randy Sanders?
Isn't he still in Florida State?
He evidently is going to lose his job. He's being talked about as an ETSU, as a candidate for the head coaching job at ETSU.
Oh, wow, I did not know that. I obviously remember Randy Sanders pretty well.
That's the... There's actually a reporter who's gone on record as saying that, and I think that he knows... dare I say, he's got some ties to ETSU. I got to come on right here, so I'll be there. All right. Tri-City Sports Now, coming back with me, Marky Billson. If you were watching on Facebook Live on our 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities, you saw some of the inside baseball that goes on between these breaks here on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities. My guest is my friend of All for Tennessee, Caleb Calhoun. And where do we begin? I guess maybe it's fun stuff like this that comes on allfortennessee.com that I think makes the website so worthwhile in reading. But you got, now what's this thing with the fan bases ranking everything from, what was it, Aaron Judge to Ohio State football to the Rolling Stones, to, I don't know, Donald Trump, who has the biggest fan base out there. What was this story all about that said that the Tennessee Volunteers had the 185th best fan base among entities of everything?
Yeah, so this was what our parent company, funny enough, which All for Tennessee is an affiliate of, Fansite did. They worked on this, and they do this every year, and the guys up there work really hard on it, and they do a really good job, and so they just it's always very creative. This came out of the fact that, Fansided as a network has been expanding a lot recently, and it started as a sports network. It started as just a sports blog. Actually, the first one was Arrowhead Addict, long before All for Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And they kind of expanded now to where they actually, this idea came about because they now have blogs about everything. They have a Star Wars blog, they have an entertainment blog, they have a Taylor Swift blog, which I myself read a lot because I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan.
There you go.
So yeah, they just have a lot of random stuff, so it just kind of made sense to do the Fandom 250. And Tennessee came in at number 185, which we could parse where Tennessee came in, but I did disagree with them on Tennessee coming in at number 18 among colleges and number 5 in the SEC. Again, when another fan base literally single-handedly runs off a coach and an athletic director and cuts out a billionaire donor from their program, give me a call. But I think Tennessee fans' actions the last month at least gave them a reason to make it to the top 10 of the colleges.
That's an interesting point right there. I just got through talking about, I don't know if you saw this article in Sports Illustrated about the future of sports coverage. And what it basically came down to is that the objective newspapermen or so that I was kind of brought up with, now you're kind of looking as it's just a wide open field. As writers, broadcasters, and podcasters seek audience share, they will increasingly embrace partisan sports writing, chasing eyeballs, predisposed to look. So in other words, you if you're covering Tennessee for All for Tennessee, there might be a bit more positive atmosphere than you would if you were writing for, say, the Knoxville News Sentinel, or if you were, I don't know, Ivan Mizell, and you were covering all the teams. And maybe that's not a surprise, but I did want to ask there, it is kind of funny you say, hey, look at these fans, they took the team over and all this. And so, yeah, Tennessee fans, John Ward said it, there's nothing like them. But how do you try to maintain a journalistic edge there on allfortennessee.com?
Well, I look at it as knowing what I am and knowing what we are, which is we are a blog. I mean, we get paid to give our take and our analysis on things. And I think the most important thing on there is for us to be fair, not be neutral, but to be fair. And yeah, we're not I'd be the first to tell you we're an opinion site. We're not an objective site. I think that what we do is, I think journalism is headed towards a healthy balance, which is, let's not forget, when the press started 150 years ago, or not press, but the penny press, excuse me, and the press started long before before then, but until the turn of the 20th century, all press was partisan. All newspapers were partisan. The idea of being objective was a very relatively new thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now with the internet, we've kind of gone back towards a lot of opinion pieces, and people do like personal takes and things like that. I think we're headed towards a healthy balance. I mean, I love what I do, but I couldn't do what I do without the Knoxville News Sentinel and the AP and USA Today and, objective news sites where I can pull information from them to give my take on things. And so I think there's going to be a kind of a healthy balance.
Well,
This all fixes itself off.
I will say this. There are two people that I've had on this show that I will not have back on because I thought that they were such Tennessee homers. One of them kept giving bad information, and the other one just I really thought was so much, in the tank for Phil Fulmer that, he couldn't possibly not hire a good coach or, that couldn't possibly be the man that isn't for the future of Tennessee. Why he won the national championship 20 years ago. Now, the athletic director at Arizona State, let's get back to some of this. He recently called out Tennessee, saying they don't know what they're doing, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have the exact quotes there, but he was highly critical of the move of Phil Fulmer. Of course, a lot of people have been highly critical of him for hiring Herm Edwards as a football coach. But what are you getting? What's the sense of what the rest of the country thinks of the hire as Phil Fulmer as the athletic director?
There might be a different feeling among administrative people and football people. I mean, and obviously there's going to be a little bit of a bias there with the football people. A lot of them do like Philip Fulmer, but I saw a lot of the same people that were trashing Tennessee fans for running off the Schiano hire. I saw a lot of them praise the Fulmer hire as athletic director, but then I did see the Arizona State one, and you're right. I mean, the way he's managed that Herm Edwards hiring, he's probably criticizing Tennessee and just thankful that he doesn't have fans that could actually run him off. And given what happened there, because that didn't make any sense.
Well, let me ask you this, though. I think that, in a way, Tennessee had a hand in that. And let me just throw this out to you. I think that the Tennessee fan base, talking about John Gruden so much, keeping that alive, and I believe John Curry did meet with him, to discuss if this was practical or not. I think that opened the door for someone like a Herm Edwards to become a head coach at a college program. I don't know if we didn't have the John Gruden rumors at Tennessee, if it would be practical to have a Herm Edwards at Arizona State. That's the thing that I don't get. So I would ask you, could the Tennessee fan base, in your opinion, or the entire situation actually have resulted in Herm Edwards getting the job at Arizona State?
Oh, that's very possible. And I'm not even so sure if Herm Edwards on the States would have been a terrible hire. I think the way they did it, where they kept the entire staff, and then they're like, oh, Herm Edwards is just going to come in, and I guess he's going to be an administrator then, or and I think Tennessee fans would be mad themselves if John Gruden were hired. As much as they wanted Gruden, I think they'd be pretty upset with Gruden coming and then not being able to bring anybody on, any of his own staff, keeping the rest of the staff in place. Trust me, most Tennessee fans wanted this entire staff gone with a couple of exceptions.
Yeah, and I know the running backs coach is staying and such, and so, but yeah, let's see. We're talking to Caleb Calhoun. He writes for allfortennessee.com. Just your thought here, the basketball game coming up, North Carolina and Tennessee this weekend. I think Tennessee's been something of a surprise, picked next to last in the conference, but yet now ranked in the top 25. And I believe this is the first time in, 6-7 years that two ranked teams will be playing each other in Thompson Bowling Arena. First time, I guess, since the Bruce Pearl era. When you look at this, break down this game for me. How can Tennessee have an upset of the national championship, or the national champion?
I think Tennessee has, believe it or not, does have an experience advantage over North Carolina, because they're very young, which is one of the reasons they were picked to finish next to last in the SEC, but they didn't really lose much. They lost Robert Hubbs, that was it, and they lost a couple of combo guards that transferred out, people like Shambari Phillips, who wasn't that valuable anyway, so they do have experience, plus a good mix of freshmen. I mean, I don't want to go cliche, but it is going to be Lamonte Turner and Grant Williams. Those are the two workhorses for the Vols. And I honestly, I'm going to go ahead and say something crazy here, which is that I don't know if there's anybody on North Carolina that can handle either of those guys right now. And the other big part is Admiral Schofield really developing more into a wing player now, able to stay on the perimeter. And so I think it's going to be those three guys that kind of make the difference.
Let me ask you this question here. This is I know you're originally from Memphis, but I'm going to ask you a Tri-Cities type question, okay? Would it be bigger this weekend for Tennessee to beat North Carolina, or would it be bigger for ETSU, who's 6-3 and is coming off a victory against Northern Kentucky, who was in the NCAAs last year, to beat 10th ranked 9-1 Xavier in Ohio? What do you think would be the bigger victory?
If we're talking about bigger upset, ETSU beating Xavier, obviously.
Okay, yeah, certainly they're not ranked, yeah.
Yeah, if we're talking outcome of the season, I mean, I'd have to say Tennessee beating North Carolina because ETSU is in one of those conferences where, if I'm not mistaken, pretty much you got to win your conference to go to the tournament. Am I right?
Yeah, there's never been two bids out of the Southern Conference. My take on this is that if an ETSU could beat Xavier, coupled with a Northern Kentucky, and perhaps, I don't know, Wofford's victory over Georgia Tech, who's struggling this year, but still, that possibly the RPI could be increased enough, also with some other non-conference games next week, so that you could, this finally be the year where the SoCon could get two bids. I'm just throwing that out. It's something, a long shot to look for. But yeah, I think that the odds of Tennessee getting an at-large bid, even if they lose to North Carolina in this game, are greater than certainly a Southern Conference team getting an at-large bid.
And if they beat North Carolina, they have a lot of house money going into the SEC season. I mean, they could have, the way this game, I don't know what's going to happen when they play Wake Forest on the road, but right now Tennessee's only lost it to the number one team in the country. If they beat North Carolina, they could go 500 in SEC play and potentially make the tournament. I
could see that. I could definitely see, especially if a signature victory and all this. And so you think that there are two players that the Tar Heels cannot face. Question I want to add. Now, you're in Memphis. I mean, Tennessee and North Carolina, the universities aren't real close to each other, but it isn't a border, rivalry of sorts. And there is some history, in athletics between these two teams. I go back, I know, Choo Choo Justice with this goes back a long way, a long run in the 40s against Tennessee is, college football legend. But that's North Carolina against Tennessee. I'm just asking you, someone from Memphis, what does North Carolina have any special role as a rival, or is it just, it would be more for Arkansas for you?
I don't think North Carolina has much of a role as a rival. I mean, because they're two different programs that prioritize different things.
Sure.
You and I must have talked about this maybe a month ago, but we talked about the sleeping giant of football in North Carolina at NC State.
Mm-hmm.
And I could potentially see a bigger rivalry between Tennessee and NC State in the future than Tennessee and North Carolina. Now, Tennessee does have some connections to North Carolina. Bud Peterson was their head coach for 4 years and came from UNC, and Rick Barnes, I think, is from the state of North Carolina. Don't quote me on that. I think he is. Or at least maybe may have gone to college there. But I wouldn't see North Carolina as much of a rivalry. I see Virginia Tech or NC State as a potential to be a bigger, if you want to say, Appalachia type rivalry.
Okay. Yes, And so, keep in mind, I mean, you got to go a long way down 40 to both Chapel Hill and Knoxville. Now, I mean, you do have on state borders. I mean, it's sort of like, as you said right there, Virginia Tech and Tennessee and Abingdon. And that's something that I got to worry about. Or in Bristol, Virginia. But the rest of the country couldn't care less, I mean, to be honest with you. But around here, it is something that I look at. Same thing, I'm sure, about in Sam's Gap, or, someplace like where's Bryson City, where Heath Schuler is from, or someplace like that. But they're just not that big of a town where, you could say that it would be like a Southern California UCLA type rivalry or something. Okay, we're talking to Caleb Calhoun of All for Tennessee. Before I let you go, the recruiting ranking of Tennessee since in football, since the firing of Butch Jones, has gone down from number 7 to number 10. Cade Mays may not play at Tennessee. He was the big get. Adrian Martinez, an outstanding quarterback prospect, he's going to go to Nebraska. How concerned are you about this?
Well, I thought about that recently. The first bit of concern that I really started to think was legitimate was when both quarterbacks decommitted. Mm-hmm. Now, the same day, Alontae Taylor did commit back to Tennessee. And I think that Jeremy Pruitt is targeting different types of guys. I'll say that. I'm starting to really question, the type of mentality that Butch Jones was trying to bring into the team, because clearly Pruitt had a plan from the start. I will say that. I'm not as concerned about it yet. We'll wait till the recruiting dead period ends and see how things are going then. But I think that I think for right now, it's not the biggest deal. I mean, losing both quarterbacks was painful to see, but again, Tennessee's got a senior quarterback next year and a sophomore with a really bright future. And honestly, actually, they got 2 sophomores. It's not like Will McBride was terrible when he was in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think right now Pruitt will have a little bit to work with, and he probably could, and he'll probably get another quarterback in here before it's all said and done.
I know that they are looking at a guy from California, and I don't have his name in front of me. But yeah, I mean, you bring in a quarterback, and they probably give him a scholarship. But yeah, just somebody there as a third stringer, kind of like a Will McBride for this year, and maybe come or fourth stringer, I guess, if Dormady comes back.
Run what Kirby Smart's running at Georgia. It looks like he's trying to get that type. He looks like he really wants the power offense, the standard post style, maybe one back guy.
Mm-hmm.
A little more under center. That's my guess of what he's probably going for.
Okay. I lied. I got to ask you this. Randy Sanders is being talked about as a head coaching candidate at East Tennessee State after about a 5-year tenure as the Florida State offensive coordinator. I think he may have been co-offensive coordinator, but having some sort of a role. Of course, he was an OC at Tennessee in '98 when they won the national championship. Just some thoughts. When I say Randy Sanders to you, what do you think?
I think my memories of him are a great position coach, not a great developer of talent as an offensive coordinator. I actually didn't criticize his play calling as much as many other Tennessee fans did, but I criticized the fact that, Casey Clausen looked as good as a senior as he did as a sophomore. Now, part of that was he didn't have Taylor Washington, Jason Witten, and Dante Stallworth as a sophomore, but I always felt that that was a bit of an indictment, and so I don't know how he'd be as a head coach. I don't think his career as a coordinator is as stellar as people make it out to be, because he was the co-offensive coordinator of Florida State, and Jimbo Fisher, as we all know, is the offensive mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's not forget, when he got promoted to offensive coordinator at Kentucky, I think Joker Phillips got fired 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So although he did beat Tennessee at Kentucky with the receiver at quarterback when Derek Dooley was there.
Mm-hmm. T. Martin was on the staff as well. Yeah. Anyway, but yes, go ahead.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I don't think it's a good hire as head coach, but maybe he's better at a smaller level. I saw a lot of him, and I saw when he was a full-time offensive coordinator at Tennessee. I remember T. Martin taking a step back in 1999 from 1998, and I thought that the loss of Cutcliffe was very evident at that point. So but again, Sanders, I think I think he's a career very good position coach. I just don't think he's a coordinator, and if I can't think someone's a good coordinator, I really can't think they'd make it as a head coach.
There was the one time, I think in '98, where Martin completed 22 straight passes, an NCAA record against
23 straight, and the only incompletion of the game was a drop by David Martin.
And then by the time he got to the Steelers, the scouting report was, he's not an accurate passer. We like the arm, but he's not an accurate. I remember reading those scouting reports and all that and saying, didn't he complete 23 passes in a row against South Carolina? Well, how could he not be an accurate passer? I don't believe the scouting report. Very interesting point that you make there about Randy Sims. We'll see. We'll see. He may be out of ETSU's pay grade, but we shall see. Anyway, it's all for Tennessee. He's Caleb Calhoun. He knows his stuff. And yes, they're ranking everything on All for Tennessee, and Tennessee fandom ranks 185. Unfortunately, Ohio State ranks number 1. Tri-City Sports Now. All right, how about that?